This week, before recording, I'm told I must, I've been instructed to skip the rest of the season of She-Hulk, because I've only watched 3 episodes, and jump straight in and watch the finale of She-Hulk.
And Garrett, for a previously on AMC's Link to the Cast, would you mind telling people what you had thought of the first 3 episodes?
So I have reached a stage, I had this problem when I saw See How They Run as well, which I thought was a very nice whodunit that insisted on turning to the camera and constantly telling me, hey, we've watched a bunch of these movies and this is just like those other things from this movie. Maybe we'll do things a little differently. So I detest at this stage the idea of meta turn to the camera fourth wall breaking.
Can I just ask, just a very quick aside, do you like Knives Out?
Yes.
Oh, thank God.
Well, you see, Knives Out is like...
I'd hate to have to hang up on you.
Dave would be out of the podcast at that point.
You see, Knives Out plays it straight. That's the difference. Yeah. It's like playing all off of those while you're just hamming it up, but it's not like turning and winking at me, literally. Like, literally turning and winking.
I remember saying that's why I love Top Gun so much from this year, because they just played it as a straight action movie.
Completely sincere. Like,
fairness,
we just made our movie.
Knives Out could have just been Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc reading the entire script, and it would still be the best film of the year.
Yeah.
So
Glass Onion, baby. 1 month away.
So that brings us to She-Hulk in the finale, which I'm just going to rampantly spoil. So, like, the entire premise of the finale is that it stops halfway through. She-Hulk turns to the camera, tells us, this fucking sucks, then goes looking for Kevin Feige, who turns out to be a robot named Kevin, who she gives out to over the story, and then the story just ends. It doesn't, resolve itself. They don't come up with a better ending. It doesn't, it just ends. It's like, we're over now.
An incredibly, how are they not being sued for ripping off GLaDOS type robots? Yeah,
it's one of those things. It did make me think a lot about Portal and why Portal's good and they're bad. I'll get to that in a sec. But it's just one of those things where it's like it's meant to play as self-deprecation, but like more plays as like self-aggrandizement. They're full of their own shit.
Aggrandizement, I think is the word.
I'm so angry at She-Hulk, I can't say words. But like there's like they're not actually subverting the MCU. They're not actually giving you meaningful commentary on the kind of movies they make. And the worst part of it, they'll continue to make movies exactly like that, even though they pointed out how they're shit. But all they're doing is like turning and saying, we understand it's bad. Isn't that funny? And like there's multiple times where like She-Hulk as a character says, that's not the story we were telling. It's like, if it wasn't, just tell the story. That's the reason, as Jack mentioned, I really liked Top Gun in that it played it so straight. It's just like, we made this movie, we're proud of it, we released it, and it rocks. Like there's so much of like Top Gun that could have been winking references to the 80s film, where they could have been like, again, for breaking that fourth wall. It's like, nope, made our movie. We told our story in and out. We're not actually like turned to the camera at all times. And it's like, it's not funny and it's not smart and it's not even new. Like Zombieland did this 15 years ago.
Mate, like, Wayne's World did it in 1992 with the whole bit.
Wayne's World was immediately the one I thought of.
Yeah.
With the
there's a and there's also the bit where they're talking about products, like that whole bit where Dana Carvey's like, sometimes people just do stuff because they get money, and that's just really sad, while wearing like head to toe Reebok products. Like every possible inch of his body is covered in Reebok logos.
I read the ending to this because I haven't watched an episode of She-Hulk, but I read the ending to this and I was thinking of like one of those kind of gimmick endings at the end of, say, like the Shiba Inu ending of Silent Hill 2 with the dog. I was thinking like one of those sorts of things where it's like, hey, this is the gimmick ending, and then there's like an actual proper ending that will come out next week or whatever.
What I thought was funny is that
it's just the ending of the show. That's the worst part. It's like they didn't do this is terrible, and then they did a good ending instead. It's like they said this is terrible, then the show is over. That's the end of the season. There's no actual resolution. It's just turning to the camera, saying it's shit, and ending the television show.
I will slightly correct you. After we meet the knowledge enhanced visual interconnectivity nexus, aka
I'm
Kevin,
upset that they didn't also make an anagram for Feige.
Can I just say that I there were a couple of moments where I was almost mad at myself for doing a little tiny chuckle, and the fact that the robot had a little hat on.
Yes.
Like the little gag about seeing the movie and she says really, and he's like no. It's like, all right, there's decent gags in there, even if I detest the premise with every fiber of my being.
Yeah, so like one thing that you have neglected to mention is that
it's terrible and awful and bad. Oh no, I did mention that.
No. Right. Aside from that, is that it doesn't just end. It ends on a Fast and Furious style barbecue.
Oh, yes.
Where all of the characters, who some of whom hadn't really met each other, all meet up together and share a drink at the end. And for some reason, like, they couldn't figure out a smart way to get Daredevil back in the show after last week's actually decent episode with Daredevil in it. So she just snaps her fingers at one point, and he literally just appears in the full costume around all of the police. You know, people were talking about how last week they killed off Daredevil because, spoilers, Daredevil sleeps with She-Hulk. Like Matt Murdock.
One of the cute things that did consistently make me laugh was just how unabashedly horny she was for Matt Murdock.
Yeah, exactly. Which was funny.
I mean, like.
Yeah, but Matt Murdock was making his way through woman after woman after woman on that Daredevil show. Foggy used to consistently take the piss out of him about it, and they're like, "Oh, Matt Murdock would never do this." I'm like, did anyone watch that Netflix show? He was macking so many women in that show. It's really annoying. But yeah, like nothing. He's so particular about his identity and himself being protected, but she clicks her fingers and he appears in the middle of all of these police, and not a single one of them has anything to say to this masked man who's just appeared, who is the devil of Hell's Kitchen.
Well, you see, Jack, they did the bad thing and they pointed at the bad thing and they said the bad thing is bad, and that's enough now. And everybody's doing it and I hate it, and everybody's self-aware and everybody's turning to the camera. It's like the Ned's Declassified School Survival Guideification of media.
Yeah, because
that was a good show. I like Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide.
One of the things I took issue with is that it also, the best episode of the season so far was like the bottle episode set at the wellness retreat that Abomination ran, and they just went back to that well and kind of ruined that episode a little bit by doing so.
They were the two best episodes. There was that bottle episode and there was the Daredevil episode, and then they just brought both things back in the finale. And as well, another thing I thought was funny is the two consistent things we'd heard about the way She-Hulk looks in the show is that the CGI is shocking, and that it would be better if they just got like a large person and painted them green to be She-Hulk, and they did both of those gimmicks within this, took the piss out of their bad CGI with the Kevin robot, and then did like the old school Hulk intro to the show, which by the way I thought was pretty cool.
I wish that was the entire show, honestly.
Yeah, like, do you know what, like, I saw you, so me, Jack and Brony have a group chat, friend of the show, keep Brony, shout out, where we had been talking about Loki and stuff when it came out, and I saw the two of you going mad about how bad the finale was, and like the first 10 minutes I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. Like, it's a little cringy, some points of it, but like the intro and the episode doesn't start off that bad.
Until the halfway point I was like, yeah, what am I mad about here? It's just a normal, if generic episode of television.
But they were telling a story at that point. Do you know? Like, they were actually... It was actually a program.
Do you feel like one of the screenwriters watched a couple of episodes of Community and kind of got like the premise, but completely lost the actual point of it?
So something I got an education on from a couple of listeners on Twitter when I was talking about this today or yesterday was that apparently, like, long before, because my tweet was like, why is this She-Hulk show a Deadpool show now? And apparently well before Deadpool, because Deadpool was only an invention of like the early 90s, so well before that, when She-Hulk's original comic run happened, it was this kind of fourth wall breaking stuff. So that's the origin of it, but as was pointed out to me in said tweets, it was also shite when they did it in the comics.
Yeah, it's the thing, it's like, that's true to the character. It's like, well, that's the reason this is an adaptation. You can fix it.
Yeah. Like in this version, in this cinematic universe, I would be leaving 100% of the fourth wall breaking stuff to Deadpool. Because like, it just, as well as just this not being a very well written episode of television, I feel like you're only going to draw comparisons to Deadpool, which did this kind of fourth wall breaking stuff, but people actually enjoyed it.
And yeah, the two things that were mentioned already, Portal and Community. Like, Portal is probably the closest example you can think of, particularly down to the AI robot. But like, Portal does all this in service of a story. It does it all with characters who are real people with motivations. It's not just we're breaking the fourth wall for the sake of it to show off how smart we are. It's the exact same thing with Community. Community has a bunch of real characters with real character motivations and real character arcs. It's not just we're going to play dress up every week and then do a Western. They do that, but even then they do it in service of characters and stories. And then you watch the She-Hulk show, where the entire point of this finale is to turn to the camera, say everything is shit, and that's it. It's not in service of anything. It's just like, aren't we so smart for understanding how bad these movies that we actually ask you to pay money for are? Isn't it so funny that we point out that they're all the same, all the CGI is shitty, that the CGI team moved on to a different project, which is a line that hits a little different with recent revelations within Marvel's
I was like,
CGI teams.
You could have probably edited that line out just fine.
I'd have taken that one out personally, but like, I hate it. I hate this trend of like, we did the bad thing, turned to the camera, said it was bad, and therefore we're off the hook. No, not how it works.
Yeah.
So check out She-Hulk. All episodes available on Disney Plus.
What you said about Community as well is like, the reason they did that gimmick is because it was like Arbed's way of communicating. You know, he didn't feel comfortable communicating outside of pop culture references. And that My Dinner with Arbed episode that basically explains the whole thing, when they're basically just, you know, Jeff thinks he's finally opened it up or whatever, and he's not. He's just doing My Dinner with Andre, and Jeff doesn't notice until right near the end. And you get like a really good insight and understanding into it, and it has like a deeper meaning. Like, there is a reason to why Community is the way it is, and all of those interactions with Arbed are the way they are, and it leads to like a deep sort of, you know, uncomfortableness with the world around him and wanting to, you know, connect with people, whereas this just does fourth wall breaking because there's no artfulness to it. Like, there's no ultimate goal, there's nothing being set up. It's just like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if we did this? And it feels like a really bad failed Saturday Night Live sketch, this whole last episode, to me. So, yeah, it's just a shame, because there is potential in this series, and Garrett's going to really disagree with this, but there's potential in here with the people that are involved and the characters they have to make a good show. If
you cut out the fourth wall stuff entirely and you just stay in your lane as a quaint little sitcom.
You say that I'll hate that, but like, I'm more on board for the idea of Marvel just saying, let's do a fun legal comedy, than I am for them saying, let's do another superhero epic. If they just did a fun little legal comedy that has none of the nonsense, that has none of the fourth wall breaking, that doesn't insist on trying to be meta or quote unquote clever, I'd love that. I'd love a nice 20-minute Marvel comedy.
I do you know what? I also laughed at another one of the Marvel tropes that you've mentioned before, Garrett, where like in that Fast and Furious barbecue scene at the end, they just had to crowbar in a tease for something bigger in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that being Planet Hulk, as we got to meet the Hulk's son, who weirdly had better CG animation than Jennifer Walters.
I hope they cut and paste in the model from the movie. That's the reason more money was spent on it.
Yeah. Wild, but yeah, that they just had to go, like, we couldn't just all agree that this was a bad idea, forget about season 1 of this show, hopefully they fucking get over themselves in season 2. No, there has to be a tie-in so that it all is quote unquote important now,
because that's the thing, they're still doing the thing. That's always the worst part. They're still doing the bad thing. You can't point at the bad thing, say it's bad, and then keep doing it. You know the next Marvel movie will end with the exact same tease that they just told us was dumb and stupid and bad and cynical in this one. You know it'll have dodgy CGI, you know they'll have daddy issues, you know they'll have all the things that they literally went back and forth with that stupid robot that they informed us were stupid and bad, and they're just gonna put them in the rest of the movies. It's so stupid.
Well, it just devalues your product as well, because it's like, if you're actually owning all of your criticisms and then telling the audience that it's stupid and bad, then people aren't going to invest in it, because not only is it someone's opinion on the internet that something is stupid and bad, you now have the actual product itself telling you that it is stupid and bad.
Do you know what it's like, Garrett? It's like
2014
WWE.
TNA. I was going a different direction.
I knew you were going to go with wrestling. I knew it's just a matter of time.
I was going to say, if in fairness, if in 6 weeks' time Triple H opens up an episode of SmackDown in the production truck and says, "Yeah, Karrion Kross, I knew you were shit this whole time," and fires him on the spot, all works for me. I'm all good for that. That's the one scenario where I'll be happy with this.
But save it for the grap up, guys.
In the whole sense of like actively demeaning people who invest in this kind of stuff by just going, we're just gonna. It
doesn't matter.
You tried, like I do and I don't feel bad for people who were just like, no guys, it's a good show, it's gonna end well, and then even the people who may have defended the show or stuck with the show to the very end, this is what they get as an ending. Just a fuck you as an ending.
But it really does remind me of TNA, because from the very beginning of TNA, you'd have characters who'd come on the show and be like, this company sucks, the people in charge are running it into the ground. They did that exact promo in like 2003, 2004, 2005. Like literally every year in company history you would be told how bad this thing is, how good it could be if only the people in charge weren't there anymore. And here we are. Marvel is repeating the mistakes of TNA wrestling. That's the reason you should head to tnachat.com to learn all about TNA history, so you don't repeat the mistakes.
And then to alargemanappears.com to learn the mistakes that TNA didn't learn.